Thank you, Saskia and Suzanne and Florian for inviting us to participate in this very timely meeting, and it's great to be up here where there's actually some warmth. This is a very cold auditorium. This is an inside look at the thinking behind the conquest of cities. The U.S. military has spent decades planning and preparing for the takeover of cities, including American cities, in the eventuality of a national emergency. And sometimes they have put theory to practice. What I'm going to read and show you may sound and look like fiction, but it's not. On February 8th, 1999, a squadron of black helicopters flying at treetop level dropped a team of soldiers into the center of Kingsville, Texas. The Army's Delta Force and Night Stalkers conducted a mock battle with live ammunition and explosions that inadvertently set afire a building. Elderly residents, relaxing on benches outside in the evening at a retirement home, watched in disbelief as explosions blew out the windows of a large office building nearby. The only people who knew about Operation Last Dance in advance were the mayor, the city manager, and the police chief, but they had all been told not to reveal the exercise for national security reasons. Operation Last Dance was not the first time that the Pentagon had launched a sneak attack on the U.S. mainland. In 1996, Special Operations Commandos turned parts of Pittsburgh into a war zone, terrifying residents with gunfire and explosions that sent one woman into premature labor. In a July 1998 exercise, 100 Marines seized downtown Jacksonville, Florida. According to the Jacksonville Metro, the troops were tasked with capturing 3 targets: City Hall, the Main Street Bridge, and, I quote, an abandoned building posing as a national bank safeguarding $5.7 billion in gold ingots. But none of these exercises were of the scale of Urban Warrior. This exercise was held in the San Francisco Bay Area from March 15 to 18, 1999, 10 years ago. In an op-ed in the San Francisco Examiner, Marine General Charles C. Krulak attempted to explain Urban Warrior's premise. He wrote, Marines will provide humanitarian assistance to the victims of an assumed national disaster. Rebel elements opposed to the operation will then arrive. The situation will deteriorate into conflict. Close quote. Now, Krulak's op-ed failed to explain to the readers exactly why rebels might be opposed to a humanitarian assistance effort in the wake of a natural disaster. We now have a 5-minute video that we shot that will show you what Urban Warrior looked like, both from the outside and from the inside.
When we heard the Pentagon was planning an armed humanitarian invasion of the Bay Area, we decided to join the Navy. We grabbed our cameras and set out to greet the fleet. Actually, we joined the Peace Navy. The exercise began with the arrival of 5 naval warships, accompanied by monstrous 88-ton, 88-foot-long Marine hovercraft. Each one was big enough to carry 4 M1A1 tanks. These massive vessels crossed the bay shrouded in huge clouds of spray. Helicopters hovered overhead, 1,000 feet above the ground. Humvees, light armored vehicles, 5-ton trucks, and fighter jets added to the din. The invasion force included 6,000 sailors and Marines and subjected local residents to 14 waves of hovercraft landings, more than 40 aircraft overflights, and the detonation of powerful flashbang grenades. They also introduced this stealth warship, first time seen. The 4 days of mock urban combat which took place at Oakland's abandoned Oak Knoll Naval Hospital, included the firing of 24,000 blank rounds. The gunfire began at 7:30 each morning and continued for 7 hours. The Pentagon's so-called land warriors were equipped with the latest in communications and weaponry. Meanwhile, the civilian actors who were portraying rebels were equipped with backpacks that were sensitive to laser lights. If your lamp flashed, you were dead. Here's a case of a sniper attack on a civilian. The people are rushing to the aid. Medics were on hand. Civilians hit the ground and take cover as the military responds to an enemy attack. Helicopters began to arrive, containing loads of civilians, suspected enemy, potential enemy combatants. The people who have been seized rush out of the helicopter under guard and prepare to be interrogated at a staging camp nearby.
I am Lieutenant Colonel Bob Love. I'm the commanding officer of Combat Service Support Enterprise. Our mission is to provide logistic support to the Special Purpose Marine Air Ground Task Force and to provide for humanitarian assistance, disaster relief to displaced persons. Our primary role in that capacity is really to reduce and relieve the suffering of these folks, whether it be due to earthquake, fire, or civil unrest. Protect the safety of the displaced person within the camp. If you'd follow me, the next tent we'll go into will be the processing tent.
Urban Warrior was actually an international invasion that involved not only U.S. troops but soldiers from Britain, Canada, and Israel. Civilian role players we detained and interrogated in 4 languages: English, Spanish, Korean, and French. Urban Warrior gave the Pentagon and its contractors an opportunity to trot out some of its latest experimental weaponry, including this little robot. This is a system called the Claws. This roof-mounted weapon was able to sense acoustic signals and zero in on targets using sound alone. While we were talking with the technician, I pointed out that the weapon appeared to be honing in on our conversation. Look out behind you. Over the course of the exercise, Urban Warrior's vehicles consumed 18,063 gallons of fuel and generated 1.2 tons of air pollution. The nitrous oxides produced were 3.4 times greater than the Bay Area Air Quality Management District's significant threshold, and these figures didn't include the pollution from military aircraft. During Urban Warrior's grand finale on March 18th, Marines discharged 60 smoke bombs and 8,000 rounds of blanks in a single hour. It did not look like a humanitarian mission.
But of course a humanitarian mission is exactly and solely what the military spokespersons told the public was happening. We, however, happened to get a hold of the secret planning documents for the mission. The Urban Warrior Advanced Warfighting Experiment was ostensibly designed to teach soldiers to distribute humanitarian aid to an earthquake-damaged city. Urban Warrior was designed actually to show Marines how to seize control of large cities. The ostensible humanitarian relief involved distributing food, water, and diapers. The Marines used this phrase again and again. These were handed out to paid actors. They spent nearly $250,000 hiring actors to portray citizens and rebels. They worked from a prepared script. The planning documents reveal that the actual goal, however, was to, and these are their active verbs, the goal was to penetrate, thrust, and swarm into urban settings to seize power plants, television and radio stations, food and water supplies, and to suppress any local opposition to the armed takeover of the city. Internal planning documents revealed that Urban Warrior's real goal was to, quote, penetrate into an urban environment, seize selected objectives from which to influence the enemy and local inhabitants, engage enemy forces, sustain friendly forces and selected non-combatants, culminating in establishing control over the objective city, unquote. The document did not explain how one becomes one of the fortunate selected non-combatants. Another planning document stresses the importance of undertaking operations, quote, designed to collapse essential functions. It's worth noting that a modern 21st century green city with thousands of rooftop solar collectors and backyard produce gardens would be much more resistant to this kind of planned military siege and takeover. The Bay Area operation pitted what was described as an enhanced combat operations center against a well-trained, well-equipped opposing force with the capability to detonate a biochemical weapon of mass destruction in an urban environment. When I pressed the Pentagon's press officer, Colonel Mark Thifo, for specifics, he told me that the weapon was, quote, an anthrax bomb, the kind that Saddam Hussein was planning to export to the U.S. Army Colonel Daniel Smith from the Washington-based Center for Defense Information dismissed Urban Warrior's humanitarian claims as ludicrous. The Marines have never had primary responsibility for humanitarian relief. That work falls to non-governmental organizations like the International Red Cross. If this is a humanitarian mission, Colonel Smith asked, where are the NGOs?